Welcome to Play for Keeps, where we dive into the fascinating world of all things collectibles, from toys to memorabilia, from hobbyists to pros. We're here to discuss our hobby, reminisce about the past, and look to the next wave of collecting. What's up, fans, geeks, and nerds? It's Mickey, also known as Cell Phone Wallet Keys, coming at you from the Nerd Initiative. And we've got a special episode of Play for Keeps today because it's technically our first, and we've got a really special guest, and I want to bring him on now. His name is Josh from Prime2da1st on social media, and he does a lot of awesome things, and we just want to get him up here and talk to him.
Hey, what's up, everybody?
So what's up, Josh? It's good to have you on the show. Why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Collector and a little bit of everything. Obviously, 1/12 scale has been my bread. I started out with Marvel Legends, like most collectors, and really discovered IG. I've been on IG since 2014, and really just started sharing my collection there. Started growing within the toy community, discovered the toy community, and started a brand for myself, making dioramas initially, and then eventually started growing where I started getting challenged by some of my friends where they're like, hey, can you make me this certain request, right? And that grew into me making 1/12 scale arcades. And that kind of just started a snowball effect where I didn't have as much time to spend with my toy collecting or toy photography, and it kind of went by the wayside. And I've been focusing probably for the last 5-6 years just specifically on arcade building and just kind of perfecting the craft and kind of adding my own personal unique touches to those. And then started a podcast about another collector figure fan _ Nate and Ruth. So we've been just trying to stay as close as possible with the pulse on the toy community.
Before we dive deeper into that, Nerd Initiative, we like to kind of get everyone's nerd origin story, right? Like what put you on the path you're on now? Were you really young? Was it pretty recent? I'm assuming it's younger, but let's hear it. What's your nerd origin story?
My origin story was, I wish I would have been bitten by a radioactive spider, but I wasn't. I had two older brothers and they were really heavily into action figures and comic books. So, anything they collected, they would take me with them. And it was just kind of that passed down type of collecting and nostalgia of being taken to Toys R Us, for your birthday and stuff like that. And learning how to handle the comic books at a very young age, and, buying doubles of stuff and #1 issues. And that really just fed my imagination. And it was so cool because now I think I would have kicked my own butt. But my older brothers, I played with their 70s Star Wars set. And now that, I'm a little bit older, they would tell me, yeah, you broke this. I broke a bunch of their stuff. So I'm like, oh, I would have punched my 5-year-old self back in the day. So yeah, it was a lot of that, exposed to, I collected anything in the 80s and stuff. I was the 80s baby. So that's how it just kind of manifested itself. And then obviously, like most collectors, we take a break when we think we're too cool for school. And then we kind of regret it. And then we go back and we try to pick up on everything that we missed.
Yep. That's pretty standard for a lot of people I hear from, being passed down from either a parent or an older brother or something. And I feel you, playing with like toys back in the day. If I had my stuff, I'd probably be a millionaire, but I don't know where it's at now. So that kind of sucks, but that is kind of the ebb and flow of it, really, when you think about it.
Right.
So beyond action figures, do you collect anything else? Like, I collect action figures too, but there's a few other things. Is there anything other than comic books and action figures, or any specific action figures you collect now?
Mostly I'm into Mezco Collective, the 1/12 Mezcos. Third party, dabbling a year and a half into some really hardcore third party licensed stuff that's official, and some other stuff that's not so official. They come up with some cheesy names, but the quality is really, really good. So I think the soft good 1/12 line has really gotten my attention.
Yeah, I actually started collecting those last year. Mezco, got into those, especially anything X-Men related and The Crow and Batman. I just, all that stuff is so cool, man. Soft goods are awesome. I like you said that. All right, so what started the arcade machines. I know you talked about you did dioramas at first, which is
Right,
awesome.
right.
How did that I'm assuming that influenced you into the arcade machines that you've been making on
Yeah.
Instagram and stuff.
On Instagram to really sell my collection because I was out on my own
Oh,
and I
yeah.
just need, like a lot of us, we need that extra cash and we turn to our collection. And I used to be a mint inbox collector, so everything was mock, and I
Mm,
had all the classic legends. Like I probably had like the first 10 way. Like, okay, I'm gonna get rid of these. I'm gonna sell them. That's it. I'm done. I'm a big boy now. So I started unboxing them, and I was like, man, I felt like a kid on Christmas. It's just
yeah.
it was so much fun. And for the first time in a long time, I was building baths that I had seen at toy shows and stuff like that. And again, I was brand new to Instagram, so I was posting some of these pictures up, and it just like grew like wildfire, where people were showing their collections off. Unique collectors where they were like, "Oh, are you selling it?" And I was like, "Well, I didn't think, like I thought I was just posting pictures." So from that, I started seeing what people were doing on Instagram and doing these dioramas, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna take a stab at it myself. Obviously, my first one was something just atrocious that I wouldn't even want to look at it now, but it gives me laughs. And again, from there, one of my friends was like, "Hey, can you make me this?" And I was like, "You know what? I never thought about that, but sure, why not?" I took a stab at it. It can do it better. And then from that, it was just like, "Oh, I think I could do it better," and I think I could do it better. And long behold, like that's where the consistency requests from those in the community, they're like, "Oh, I want this." And I don't know how many Marvel
Mhm.
vs. Capcom arcades I've made. I've throughout the years, I've been at this for close now to 6 years. So at first it was like
Oh,
wildfire.
wow.
Everybody wanted a Marvel Capcom arcade, but yeah, that's kind of how it started, where it was just word of mouth, and then it was one or two individuals posted it, and it was just like overnight. It was crazy.
Yeah, when, Tony and the guys were sending me some pics, I was like, "This is just fire, man." I grew up in arcades, so that was just yes, I love it, and then I've seen some of your newer stuff. I think the most recent one I saw was Maximum Carnage, which I was, like, blowing my mind
Yeah,
at because that was
yeah,
just one of my favorite games, when I
yeah,
was a little bit younger. So that's awesome. Where do you, like, get that stuff? Do you find it online and just kinda size it to
yeah.
what you need and
So a lot of times, and again, the learning curve, right?
yeah,
A lot of times finding the images online and then learning Photoshop. So like for the last 2 years, I've been really learning how to um, master the skill of Photoshop, which is always, it's always ongoing. It's always evolving to something newer. To you can see the progression and evolution from when I first started making arcades to now. It was handmade. Like everything was hand cut, um,
mm,
um, sanded. I was standing there with hand watching a game or something, and just
yeah.
everything like on my kitchen table. Whereas now, like a lot of it, I have a CNC machine,
Oh, that's good.
so it does a lot of the cuts, and so the cuts are much more precise. There's still some sanding, but not as much. And then it's not. Before I used to hand paint everything. Now I have like like a spray gun, so it's
Yeah,
just a little bit more cleaner. And that's really where now I'm able to add my own touch because I've learned more on how to Photoshop more effectively, more cleaner. Where
yeah,
like that Maximum Carnage, there's some games where I think a lot of us arcade games in an arcade environment, and I would have been an arcade of this, but there wasn't. I either played it
right.
on my end or right. So a lot of times I do get requests where they're like that Maximum Carnage, and he's like, I wish they would have had an arcade. So then it's just like a matter of
Yeah,
collaboration with the individual, and they give me a framework to work with, but it's always best when they
yeah.
just kind of like let you go at it, right? So they're like, hey, I just want a Maximum Carnage arcade game, and I was like, all right, let me see what I can mock up, and I threw him two different versions, and he was like, yeah, I like this, take away this, add a little bit more of that, and next thing you know, it was like that again. I wasn't expecting it because I had taken a break and I've been coming back. I had a lot of good reception from across different social. Posted that picture.
Yeah, I thought it was fire, man. That was a really good one.
Yeah,
That's
thanks.
cool. That's cool that 2 people came together to make something really
Yeah.
awesome like that. That's great. Um, is there anything else? I think I saw, like, you made, like, a Marvel sign. Is there
Yep.
anything else you make or you hope to maybe one day go beyond and make these or this or that? Like, you evolve into something else?
Eventually, the goal is to make one for one size scale. Like then I can start making my own arcades and just
Oh,
have them here in
yeah.
my nerd room. Like that's
Yes.
that way. Then I can outsource the decals and have them like full size.
Mhm.
I don't have that type of printer capability, but that's the ultimate goal, to make like full size arcades. for my own pleasure, and that way I can have like my ultimate nerd room. But
That's awesome.
a lot of times it's just coming up with different 1/12 scales, just because I love making like very unique, different props for that 1/12 world.
Yeah, that's awesome stuff. That's something I haven't gotten into. I collect a lot of action figures, but, like, I keep saying I wanna get into props. I recently built, like, a custom bike for my, Ghost Rider, and that's about
Hmm.
as far as I've gone so far, but just
Hmm.
seeing your stuff is really inspiring. It's really cool. Um, I know you sell them online, you sell them on your
Hmm.
Instagram, and, do you ever, like, take them? Have you taken them to a con or, like, a toy show or anything
Yeah.
yet? Yeah?
So I've been taking them recently to toy shows and stuff, and I where people kind of trip out. They're like, "Wait, is that a 1/12
Yeah.
scale arcade?" And they're like, "Does it work?" A lot of times people, they're like, "Oh, or is that, does it work?" I'm like, "No, it doesn't." They're like, "Wow, that's really cool." I mean, I even had someone reach out to me on one of my pictures because they thought it was an actual life size, like I was selling it. They're like, "You're selling it for this much? That's crazy. I'll take it right now." And I'm like, this is like 6 inches, right? It's not like 6 feet. So um I've been getting a lot of good receptions at toy shows, and again, can you make this? I'm like, yeah, I can make whatever, like personalized requests where they either want like their favorite team or they'll want like a picture of their dog on their arcade. So I was like,
Oh,
hey,
wow.
whatever floats your boat. If you want an arcade of your
Yeah.
dog, then that's just send me the picture. So that's been the first where I was like, okay, and that's what I'm working on. It's like someone wants an arcade of their dog.
That's fascinating, like, I wouldn't have thought anybody would do that, so that's kinda cool. With your dioramas, have you done any more with that? Have you kinda moved on from that, or are you still making those as well?
I'm still making those as well. I'm actually thinking about coming back. So I've done a couple of like short waves where I remember being to something like we've touched upon it in our podcast where we talk about that and the first time collector, and they're seeing the toy community where it like toy photographers where you see their setups and you're like, damn, I wish like my pictures could be like diorama, or
Mm,
I could do that, or and we set up all these a lot of times. I remember for me, studying factor was one, how do I go about making a diorama? And then sometimes when I would reach out to try to purchase the diorama, dioramas are really, really expensive. And
yeah,
if you can find a diorama under 150 bucks that's decent, like that's a solid deal. And a lot of times those that don't really I bet it, they don't understand that it's like the time and effort to try to master like the exact bricklaying, the carving out and the paint techniques and all that. Like that's why it's so much. A lot of times like, oh, that's why are you charging so much for it's just foam? Well, make easier said than done. Then try it for yourself. But
right,
what
right.
I've done is I've sold short like smaller dial scale environments for like I call them budget dials. So it's like you get two walls and a base for like $100 shipped to us, and that was and I did them in waves. Like I had only like 20 slots because I was like, well, I'm not gonna break my back over like doing so much because I'm really passionate about like the detail stuff. So sometimes I give it too much, but at the same time, I was like, I wanted to provide something for that novice toy photographer that just needs like a basic background. And
Mm,
for most of us, like we need an alley. I don't know why, but a lot of us like our first shot while we picture is alley and bricks. Like
yeah,
everybody wants a brick wall in the background. So
yeah.
that was the first wave, and it did amazing. Like it sold. I was sold out. I had to turn people away because I just had so many orders,
Wow.
and that kind of gave me like an idea. I'm like, okay, I just need to handle it, and I'm not. Again, I don't want people to earn money and then wait for weeks and weeks and months. I wanted to be a quick
Yeah,
turnaround. So I'm like, hey, you're only waiting like 3 to 4 weeks, and then I package them up and I can ship them out to your, and you guys can have them in your hands faster. So I did that, and it took a pause because I had to balance between the arcade orders and the dial orders. And then I did a broken down rubble like environment where it was like two arches and it was just rubble everywhere. The type of scene almost looked like the inside of like was just very plain, and
oh,
but yet you had like hard wooden floors, and you had you can kind of dress it up.
yeah,
So I think I'm gonna bring that back. Just because I had a lot of good reception from those first time collectors where they're like, this was my first style, and it's easy. It's breaking the bank, and I can have finally like a
yeah, $100 is not really that bad for something like that, that somebody
yeah,
put a lot of work into, and
yeah,
y yeah, I would be happy to find
and
something like that for 100
yeah,
bucks.
and for dimensional wise, for something like if you want to think visual, like if you have a DTOF, it would fit perfectly in your DTOF, and it's like two walls, so it's about 12 inches in height and it's about 13 inches deep. So in a DTOF, I have some DTOF, so that's I kind of had that idea of like I'm gonna build these dials, so that way people can display them in their DTOF, and then have two of the three walls covered.
That's smart, yeah, good idea.
Yeah.
Um, so, like, Well, you mentioned your podcast, and I'd actually like to know a little more about that. You guys kinda just talk collecting, or do you talk, like, the craft that of what you're doing? Is it just focused mainly on action figures?
We like everything under the sun that a modern day collector goes. So like our tagline is like the ups and downs that us modern day collectors go through. So the highs and lows, like the FOMO, the fear of FOMO of like, are we
Oh
missing
god, yeah.
out because of this latest drop and I didn't get it, so I'm gonna sell everything I have just to get this one figure,
Mhm.
or the hunt for the grail, things like that, toy hunts. We kind of it's more of a, like we have like this discussions. We do have guests from the toy community every once in a while. Yeah, we try to kind of cover everything under the sun that us collectors go, and we spend a little bit of time on toy news. But there are so many great content creators that cover the toy news, and I think most of us have a good on the toy news that we kind of like dissect.
Yeah. I'm so, like, fascinated with just the hobby of collecting in general. Like, it
Right,
doesn't have to be anything specific, just our mindsets, and it's different for everybody with different things we collect, and it's this
right,
is kinda where I'm trying to go with my little corner is just, why do you collect that? And, like, what what is the passion with that? Whether it be Marvel Legends, like, or Mezcos, or Star Wars, or
yeah,
DC McFarlane, or whatever it may be, Transformers, I don't know. It could be a million things, but there's just a lot of passion behind it usually when you really start talking to people. It like, for me, Marvel means a lot. I collect a lot of Marvel stuff.
yeah,
So, especially X-Men in particular,
yeah,
and Spider-Man and Venom, if you can't tell. But,
yeah,
uh, so yeah, I'm just trying to I love talking about that stuff. Like, what is it that drives you to get that, you know? So, that would be
right.
cool.
Oh
I
yeah,
gotta check out the podcast sometime. I didn't know
yeah, for
you
sure.
guys had that. I did notice a podcast link on your Instagram, but I hadn't checked it out yet.
It's all good.
I know you spoke about comic books as a young,
Yeah.
with your nerd or just being young. Is that something, are you still into comic books, or is that kinda, like, passed by, you moved on to something
No,
else?
not as much
Yeah.
because I read them digitally now, but like here in these like frames here, I have some of the issues that were very sentimental. Either they're signatured or they're my number ones that I took forever. I had to go to a con. Like, I'm in California, so WonderCon used to happen in the Bay Area. So we used to go to WonderCon every single year, and then it moved to Southern California, which is a little bit of a drive for us. But
Mm.
that's kind of when it's like, hey, here, have some kids and stop collecting. So a lot of these issues, it's like they're sentimental in a way where now it's like I need more. I need to maybe go back to these comic books because now my son's at an age where he's like he comes in here and he's like, oh, what's like
Yeah.
I'm introducing him now to comics. So I'm like, oh, I feel some type of pressure now. Now I have to like hand him. He's definitely into figures, but he's more of a Lego collector, Jurassic Park. And
Mm.
it's so funny because he has his shelves and he has them all set up. He has scenes. He has like Samuel L. Jackson getting his arm bit off and
That's awesome.
raptors everywhere. So it's very cool to see that how he comes in here, he gets inspiration, and he walks out, and I see him like tinkering in his room. So it's very cool.
That's great, man. Yeah, comic books is something I don't know why I haven't been able to let it go. There's just something about holding a comic book and reading it that I
Yeah.
love. So it's not the best thing as far as space goes because I'm running
Right.
out of room after all these years,
Yeah.
but yeah. So we spoke about it before, you collabing with a customer. If
Yeah.
someone wanted to reach out, and I mean, you said you're doing like a dog arcade, so obviously you'll do like just about anything as
Oh
in
yeah.
terms of requests. Uh,
Yeah.
what would somebody need to do to reach out to you and
um, the
all
best
that?
way to do it is just right now is through IG. Just go through my IG, Prime2da1st. You can send me a DM. And a lot of times the conversation starts in the comments. People will comment on some of my pictures, or they'll say, like I have something particular in mind. Like I have another kind of not off the wall request, but very particular. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work.
Mhm.
But it's I'm very flexible as far as keeping things in perspective where sometimes making that vision can be a little bit challenging, but I'm very open to having that dialogue. So that's probably the best way is for individuals to reach out to me is through Instagram right now because I'm trying to grow other social platforms at the same time. It could be
Oh, man, it's so time consuming, I know. Creating content
Mhm.
is tough. Uh,
Yeah.
so just a personal collector question right now. Like, at this moment, do you have a grail you're still searching after or trying to get?
Y- Um,
It's kinda like,
I
I'm
thought I
too busy for that right now.
did, but no, because I've been going through this season where I'm like really letting go a lot of my older legends. I had so many Toy Biz legends, and
Mm,
even like newer has rid of a lot of totes and bins. Where my new model was like, okay, no more figures and bins. Like, if it's not up on my shelves, and currently I'm in the mod like rearranging the nerd room and putting up more shelves
mhm.
and fix it. But if I can't display it and I can't have it at arm's reach, then I shouldn't have it. Like that was a very hard line for me to start creating, only because I think something that you mentioned was like space. Like space is
Yeah.
scarce when it comes to collector, especially when you're starting lines like Mythic Legions. I started getting into Mafex, Super Seven. I mean, where was I going to put the Thunder Tank? I was like, oh, I have no space for them. My Galactus is still boxed up. I have
Uh,
Giant Man on the way. I
yeah,
just got his tank. It's like, where do I pull all this stuff? I want to
yeah.
be able to show it off and walk in and breath of fresh air and be like, yes, this is awesome. And right now, it doesn't give me an awesome feeling because everything's like in boxes. So where I'm like, I can't. I have no grail. Unfortunately, I don't have a grail because I feel like I start opening up boxes, and then I'm like, oh, I didn't know. I realized I already had this. I almost bought it the other day.
Yeah, man, I know that feeling. I've still got a bunch of, tubs full of stuff that
Yeah.
I need to go through it. I actually went through an organizer recently, but I just thought I should just sell most of the stuff. It just
It's a
sits out
good feeling.
there.
I'm telling you, it hurts because I started this probably like 6 months ago, and it was my first like big toy show, and I took all my loose stuff. Like I want to okay, not all my loose stuff, but I want to say like 80% of my loose stuff that was in bins. That was the thing. It was stuff that was in bins in the garage that hasn't seen the day of light for like at least a year, at least the minimum. So that was kind of like my rules. Like if I haven't it hasn't seen or I haven't seen it for a year, I should just probably sell it. It doesn't make any sense. So I took it, and it was just I don't know, it's may sound weird, but it's like seeing your kids being ripped away from you. Like, could be
Oh,
dramatic, but
I know.
it's like you're seeing, like all these collectors. It was so funny because I had like, the plastic bins that most of us have, and then one of the collectors like, are these for sale too? And it was like crazy price. Though. I think I was selling them for like $10. Everything loose was like $10. It was like $10 or like three for 25 or something like that.
Mm.
And they're like, yeah. And he's like, these are even $10. I'm like, yeah, everything. I mean, I had some stuff that you'd be. So the minute he said, yeah, everything that's on this table is like that's the price. I just want to get rid of the stuff. You would have imagined, because all of a sudden like 10, 15 collectors showed up out of nowhere, and it was just like buzzards, and like it was just crazy. I was like, holy moly. And people were just like, like I got this, I got this. It was just insane. And being a collector that I would only open up stuff and either have it displayed. I used to be able to have everything displayed. We moved, it went to tubs, and then that's it. It stayed like that, right?
Mhm, yeah.
So they're in fairly mint condition, because it's not like I was out there playing in the sandbox or kicking trees with them, you know, or posing them a lot to a photographer. I was just taking them out of the package, sure they're not broken, and then put them up on display. So everything was, in there. And from there, it's just they go into baggies, and that was it. Like you can tell, like the guy was like, "Oh man, this still smells like it." I'm like, it was literally just on the shelf, and then in the tub, and then that's it. And that it's a bad feeling, but it's also a good feeling, because then the tubs were all empty, and then you have like a nice hefty pocket. Your pocket's a little bit heavier, and you're like, "Oh man, it feels good." Now I'm gonna go turn around and buy some more toys, and
Yeah.
now I'm out of space again. I'm like, cool. So I'm ready to do unload. And then it gets easier. It does get easier. The more you do it, you're like, okay, yeah, you
Yeah.
can start letting go. This last toy sale, people were negotiating with me. And again, like I have no issues with letting go. At the end of the day, I tell myself, it's about letting go of these figures and trying to make you rich off of them. But I want to at least like get a decent return, not double or triple the profit, but just something. But there's some people where it's like, I'll give you $5. I'm like, come on, that's worth more than five.
Somebody's always looking for a deal. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely started over the last couple of years, upgrading, right? So, like, getting rid
Uh-huh.
of old
Yeah.
Marvel Legends and stuff and getting into Mezcos, getting into Mafex. I still I
Yeah.
like Super 7 Ultimates. I'm trying to collect the Thundercats wave, actually, and that's another thing.
Okay.
Just move all this stuff so I can get the stuff I
Yeah.
think is better anyway. That's
Right.
that's yeah, like I say, it's a cycle. It's a beautiful cycle, out with the old, in with the new, but it
Right.
can be stressful. I'm stressed out about it all the time. Uh, alright, well, this is pretty good. Do you wanna, like we've already kinda talked about your socials, but if you wanna plug them, 'em, that'd be great, where people can find you and see
Yeah.
everything you're doing and request something.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of like here I have one on hand. This is a Marvel's Capcom
Yes.
blue arcade that someone had
Look at
requested.
look at
And
that.
if you guys want to check out, most of my stuff right now is on Instagram. It's all under Prime2da1st. I do have a TikTok where I'm trying to do more behind the scenes, and that's where I'll try to keep my behind the scenes stuff or how I go about making them. Um, I've gotten some requests where people want to see like just the process of me laying out and the CNC cutting it and putting it together. So I'm like, all right, if y'all want to get a kick out of it, that's fine for me. It's challenging to try to film everything while orders. So Prime2da1st, I'm on all social medias is Instagram, Facebook, and X. Actively is on Instagram, and then also we do have. Well, I am part of a podcast that we've mentioned earlier. The figure to drop 2 episodes a month, and then we do a weekly live every other Monday on at 6 Pacific Standard Time under the Figure Booth is our YouTube channel.
That's awesome, man. I'm telling you guys, you gotta check this out because if you're a fan of, like, retro arcades, just Marvel, DC,
Yeah.
anything nerd related, go check out these pages. I was blown away when I started looking through them, and I was like, "I wanna buy all this stuff, but I don't have money for it right now. I have to save up and get a couple. I have to request something cool." Uh,
Yeah,
so yeah,
that's how it starts.
Josh, I wanna thank you, man, for coming on, and this was really cool. Hope we can, like, talk again sometime, and I can't wait to see what else you make, man. It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, next time you can come on to the Figure Booth and we'll have you on. It's kind of a
Let me know anytime, man,
there you
anytime.
go.
So this has kinda been, like, the first sorta episode of Play for Keeps. This is something Nerd Initiative we're trying to deal with. We're trying to branch out into toys and collectibles. I focus a little more on collectibles, but toys are obviously a part of that. I'm Cell Phone Wallet Keys. Thank you guys for stopping by, and we'll talk to you next time.
Peace.